that works. Check, 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 check. Is that good? You hear me out there? Good, okay. Oh, it's so nice to be here. It was really easy to work on peace this week because I've been out at Lake Anna on a lakefront property just looking at the water the whole week. We're redoing our kitchen, and this was the week where they kicked us out to refinish the floors and all that kind of stuff. So we were searching around for different places to stay that would accept all of our critters, 2 cats and a dog. And it's not easy, trust me. There were only about a handful of places within an hour. And one of them just so happened to be right on the water. So I said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And I realized as I was there kind of contemplating peace in this peaceful setting, I realized that's not what it's all about. It's easy to be peaceful on the lake. It's really about peace amid the storm. It's about being peaceful when things around you are not supporting your peace. And how do you do that? And that's what the daily word was all about today. Choosing peace in times when the world may be swirling around you, times when there may be a storm coming. So I'm going to start with this beautiful song. Feel free to sing along if you know the lyrics. And if not, just kind of close your eyes and take it in. And we'll get into our talk. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It's in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving to all men that we receive, and in dying that we're born to eternal life. Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Loved with all my soul. Amen. Thank you. That felt kind of good, didn't it? Thank you for indulging me. Is this loud enough for everyone? So, let's get started here. And for those of you that are OCD, I will invite you to not look at this screen. Not only is the projection too big for the screen, but we tried straightening it earlier and obviously didn't do a good job. So I promise you, if you're looking at the screen for the next 45 minutes, you're going to go home and have to take a Valium. So I got my own little screen here. But anyway, so it's peace amid the storm. And as I was contemplating this week, I realized I had already written this talk. So some of you may remember it. I delivered it at the very beginning of COVID when the storm was just upon us. And I looked at it again to see if there was anything that needed to be changed. And apparently no. Apparently peace has not changed since the beginning of COVID. At least my interpretation of it hasn't changed. So I left it pretty much untouched. And today, if you've already seen it, I hope will serve as a powerful reminder and a deepening of a process that you can use to just reach inner peace when things around you are not peaceful. And I try to make this talk as practical as possible, as I do all my talks, because if you walk away with here with nothing but platitudes, there's not a whole lot you can do with that in your everyday life. And unity is all about practical Christianity. So that's how I kind of developed the mindset of this talk, is how can I really help myself first, obviously, and then help others be peaceful when life around us is not peaceful. So we'll just take a look, and we'll start with the concept of a storm. And I'm going to have to refer to my own notes. Thankfully, I brought them because I can't even read that. So what I'm saying here is that, all right, I'll ask this way. Is there anyone here, I'm making the analogy, this entire talk is making the analogy between physical storms that you see on the earth plane and spiritual storms that we experience in our lives. So the whole talk is basically an analogy of those two things. Is there anyone here that has not experienced spiritual storms that have rocked you to your core? Any hands? So I'm going to that here, and is better. Okay, we'll just work through it until there's an issue. Okay. Okay. Hello. Hello. There we go. Okay. Good. Yeah, that sounds better. So this talk is for everyone who's ever experienced a spiritual storm in their life. So I'm assuming that's literally everyone. I can't imagine anyone that has gotten through life in such a way that they've never really been rocked to their core with a storm that maybe felt like it might even break you. So that's the concept of where we're headed with this. So I put together these slides for a reason, and I trust the universe, and I trust that storms are good. And I don't trust that storms are good because I have this enormous capacity for faith. I trust that storms are good because they're a very, very natural and frequently occurring part of nature. And I believe that nature has got it right. I think nature knows how to take care of itself in the best way possible. So storms must be good. They must have a purpose, they must have a function, and they must be important for us. So with that concept, I decided to research storms and what benefit there are to storms. And I found a lot of things, and I will share with you a parallel to each of them in our spiritual storms. And there's many of them. There's 2 slides that look just like this. That's how many benefits there are and important aspects there are to storms. Storms are responsible for 25% or more of the rainfall for many areas around the world. So without natural storms, many areas of the world would live in drought-like conditions. 25 to 30% of their water supply would not be available. I say the spiritual analogy to that is that storms are probably responsible for 50% or more of our spiritual growth and opportunities. We enjoy times when there's not storms in our lives, but we grow when there are. So just like the water supply is to the earth, I think the spiritual supply for growth is just as powerful in the spiritual storm as it is in the earthly storm. There's a redistribution of topsoil which promotes better agriculture. And I would say within our spiritual benefit, there's a redistribution of stuck energy, which promotes more fertile soil within ourselves, within our hearts, for planting new seed thoughts. Storms tend to wash away a lot of things that we might have been holding on to that no longer serve us. And that's a very similar thing that the storms do to the earth, for the earth. Storms lower the temperature of the planet. When has that ever been more important than right now, as the planet's temperature is apparently increasing? The storms are one of the biggest tools that the earth has for naturally just cooling down the earth. I also think it cools down our heated situations by clearing the air, with a lot of situations that may bubble up as storms within us and with others as well. So there is a potential for cooling of this heated situation. Storms make barrier islands wider, and barrier islands serve a purpose. They're really there as a protective barrier to the shoreline. And I think that it also makes our protective layers stronger. It clears red tide and oxygenates the water. Have anybody ever experienced red tide? It happens a lot on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Red tide is a bloom that happens, an algae bloom that happens that's so bad that you literally have to stay in your apartment with the recirculating air because you will have allergy symptoms like you've never experienced before. So it clears that up and it oxygenates the water. I would say it clears our stubborn thought patterns and provides us fresh water and fresh oxygen. They're efficient. Storms are efficient drought busters. So there could be a situation where there's a drought that has lasted for a year. But in one night, or let's just say in one storm, the drought could be ended. You don't need a year of rain to replenish a year of drought. You just need one really, really good storm. So it also brings in much needed humbling source energy to us. We do know that when we've been rocked through our personal storms, that is very humbling. And we also realize that we may have been attempting to live our lives without the assistance of the divine. We may have been trying to do it all ourselves, and then we quickly find that we alone cannot do that sometimes. So it brings you to a humble place where even the hardest heart sometimes has to reach out and say, I need help. And a storm can do that for you as well. It's cleansing winds to promote healthy coastal forest conditions. So they're also cleansing winds to promote a new, fresh way of being. So any gardeners out there? Anybody like to garden? So it's basically pruning, and you know how important pruning is. Well, this is nature's way to prune the earth. But wait, there's more. And if you act now, I will throw in a Ginsu knife. Does anybody remember Ginsu knives? All right, so storms also provide a healthy heat balance between the equator and the poles. I didn't know any of this, but they do. They provide a healthy balance between our heads and our hearts. Storms distribute warmth throughout the planet. And storms distribute understanding to all affected parties in the spiritual storm. Without tropical cyclones, many barrier islands would have sunk into the ocean. Without spiritual storms, our layers of protection may have eroded. The great winds carry seeds from far and wide to replenish areas wrought by damage of fire. The great winds carry seeds far and wide to replace error thinking with truth. Are you following along here? Is this landing? Does it make sense? Pruning of dead limbs, which strengthens the trees and feeds the soil, and the pruning of destructive thought patterns that need to be gone. So with that being said, the first step in all of this, if you're going to find peace amid the storm, the first thing you have to accept is that storms are necessary and they're good. Now, nobody wants a storm in their life. Nobody's like, bring it on, baby, bring it on. And there are peaceful ways to learn without them. And that's what I affirm for all of us. But at the same time, an acknowledgement that storms are a good thing is in and of itself a peace thought. Because what you're doing is you're accepting and acknowledging that you are part of the very nature that you're observing. You're accepting and acknowledging that this process, though painful, is ultimately good for you. And I know we've all learned from our spiritual storms. We all have. We're all, I would venture to say that we're all the people that we are today because of the storms. And that without them, we wouldn't really be who we are today. We wouldn't be as evolved. We wouldn't be as advanced. We wouldn't be as open-hearted. We might not be as connected today if we didn't have these opportunities in our lives that appeared, and were, I'll acknowledge that they can be painful, but at the same time, important. So now we'll just take a look at a passage from the Bible, Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Another very, very peaceful thought. Because, again, as I referred to earlier, if you're trying to go it alone, if you feel as if you're the only one that could make this work, and you're trying to do it without the help of the divinity within you and the divinity of others, if you're being too stoic about this process and you're not allowing all this potential divine energy to be part of your process, then you are making this storm a lot harder than it has to be. It's the equivalent of experiencing the storm standing at the beach while the tidal wave hits you, as opposed to getting inland and getting some shelter. So the storms are necessary, but how you deal with the storms is up to you. And the process that you use to get through the storms can be a lot less painful than sometimes we make ourselves because of the choices we make. So herein lies the real work And the process that I kind of looked at to help me, there's 3 stages to dealing with storms. Now, you can see this, right? Can you see that there's a whole area of shoreline that used to be houses that are now all demolished to rubble? And can you see the one house that's standing? This was a big Category 5 hurricane that hit Galveston, Texas. I think it was probably going on about 10 years ago now. And you'll notice that one house is standing. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about preparing for the storm. This person obviously had a lot of money. You know, they built a beautiful house on the shoreline. But I would venture to say that this house could have been twice as big and twice as luxurious if they had chosen to have swimming pools and tennis courts and 10 bedrooms instead of 5, et cetera, et cetera. But this particular person put their financial energy into making this house hurricane-proof. Why? Because this particular person realized that it's not a matter of if. It's just a matter of when. Right? And that's the way with us too. It's not a matter of if. No one raised their hand and said, I have not had any storms. It's just a matter of when. So preparation is key. And by the way, you might think that house is built in a certain way that makes it more rigid than all the other homes, that makes it stronger and more solid, maybe thicker foundations and more rigidity. But the most amazing aspect of all of this to me is that what made this house survive the storm is that it's actually more flexible than the other houses. Kind of like the palm trees. The palm trees survived many, 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 many really difficult storms that an oak tree would never survive because they bend and they sway and they're more flexible. So this house is obviously more flexible and therefore it survived. So the question then becomes, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you prepared for the storm that will come? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It might be a small one. It could be Category 1. It could be Category 5. We don't know. And I wish no storms on anyone, and I wish safety for everyone. But I prepare knowing that it's just a matter of time before storms come. So how do I choose to be peaceful in that setting is my job. So this is preparing now. Preparing for the storm. Now you see the analogy I used here, all the empty shelves and all the craziness that goes on before storms, and you can't get a battery within 100 mile radius, and toilet paper, right? Remember, toilet paper was gone, and all the things you took for granted, suddenly people start hoarding, and that's the kind of preparation that a lot of people start thinking about. But I'm talking about some spiritual preparation now. So just like that house was built on a solid foundation, building our own personal house on a solid foundation is key. Because a storm is much more likely to knock you over if you don't have a strong foundation. So that's an important part of everything. In fact, preparation is key to any storm that may be coming. And these are your daily practices. This is your, you're here. You're here on Sunday at 4 o'clock, working on the foundation of your house. You're continuing to do that. So kudos for that. And that's what this is all about. Also, I put up their focus on gratitude because I don't think there's any talk that I could ever do where gratitude doesn't make it better. Because gratitude is really just the law of attraction at work. You're focusing on things you're grateful for, therefore you're likely to generate more things you're grateful for. You focus on things that are wrong in your life, therefore you're likely to generate more things that are wrong in your life. That's the law of attraction. In Unity, we call it the law of mind to action. It's the same thing. And I don't know about you, but for me, this is a universal truth. It really is. Your predominant thoughts generate your predominant feeling domain. And that combination of your head focusing and your heart feeling, certain vibration is emanated. And that attracts all that is like to it. That's how it works. But it starts with the thoughts. And the thoughts generate those feelings, and that intensifies and turbocharges the thoughts. So if you're focused on something you can't stand, and then you start thinking about it more and more, and now it starts bubbling up and it starts feeling like hatred, you're sending out a very, very strong and clear signal. But on the other hand, if you're focused on gratitude, your feeling domain changes completely. And you start to really notice all the simple things you're grateful for. My grandmother used to thank God for random things like her pancreas. Right? When was the last time you thanked yourself for your pancreas? Well, I promise you, if you're a type 1 diabetic, you'd be happy to be thanking yourself for a functional pancreas because you don't have one, right? So it's only when you lose things. Like, I haven't thanked God for my left leg lately. But you better believe if I lost my left leg, I would have really missed a lot of great opportunities to be thankful for that left leg all my life. So gratitude. Do your spiritual work. We talked about that. Have an evacuation plan, right? Be safe. If you're in a spiritual storm that involves others, if there's abuse, if there's things that are rocking your safety world, just like in a physical storm, sometimes you need a spiritual way to evacuate, to get away from people that can be hurtful, to get away from situations that are hurtful. Turn off the news. I promise you, if you're watching the news, they're not feeding you anything good. No, it never happens. You turn it on, and the bad stuff comes at you. And it just reinforces it, and then that starts to create your own thoughts, and then your own thoughts start to generate, and they become very similar to what you've been hearing, and it's indoctrination, and before you know it, you're part of the indoctrination, and then before you know it, that becomes your primary signal. And boy, is that happening a lot now. A lot. So try to avoid that, because you get to choose your thoughts and feelings. You don't have to accept what's given to you. This is the great freedom that we've all been given. At the end of the day, you could have everything taken from you, but you get to choose your thoughts. Right? I think didn't Nelson Mandela say that? Someone said that. That went through a horrible period of, a Holocaust survivor. He said, they could take everything from me, but they weren't able to take my thoughts. And sometimes that's all you have, but you have to be a good guardian of those thoughts. You can't allow a TV network to do that for you. You have to be the guardian of that. Build a support system. Like I said, don't go this alone. There's so many great people that have been through it. In fact, if they've been through it, they might know a shortcut. Reach out when you're experiencing that. Avoid drama at all costs. A little storm back there? A little drama. Avoid drama. All right, here's one of my favorite. Avoid energy vampires. You know what they are, right? Yeah. Just stay away from them. Because they need your energy. They want your divine energy. Because they're blocked to their own. So that's what they're looking for. And that's why they're out there constantly trying to feed on everyone. Because personally, they're blocked off to source energy. It's just that simple. Set clear and healthy boundaries. And then, I'm going to say, choose your personal climate. Because there are places on the earth that experience less storms than others. So you get to choose your own personal climate. It's your choice where you dwell. So that little area right there next to Saudi Arabia is Qatar. And I double-checked it again because it's been a year and a half since I did this talk, and it's still the safest place on Earth for any kind of natural disaster, storms, weather patterns. It's the safest place you could possibly live, and the next one is Saudi Arabia. Now, what I like about this, and this is the one time I'm going to want you to actually look at this screen, and if you could see it all the way out to the far end, to me it looks like that little country right there is in the womb. Do you see it? Do you see how the womb is protecting that country? So, again, we get to choose. We get to choose our climate. And we get to build that ourselves. So let's take a look at that, what that might look like. Think about that. Meditate on that. What spiritual climate do you want? Have you been riddled with storm after storm after storm after storm? Is that your pattern? Are you part of the creation of those storms? I mean, in nature, they just kind of happen, but I'm of the firm belief that, we're creators. And we have a climate that creates. And I've known a lot of people that, I reconnect with people from high school now on Facebook, and they're still in their same pattern. They're still doing those same behaviors, and the same storms are coming up and everything else, and that's not coincidental. And a lot of times it has to do with kind of a victim mindset. Like they feel as if everything's always happening bad to them, not through them. And the thinking is still there. And it gives me a great opportunity to really have really good conversations with people about things that have, that are stuck in these patterns. So meditate on what your climate is like and where you want it to be. And then we'll look at step 3, which is managing through the storm. So we've prepared for the storm. You've already kind of worked on the idea of establishing the climate that you want to live in. And I decided a long time ago, because I was one of those people that would generate lots of storms in my life, almost to the point of addiction to these storms. I'd get bored, right? Oh, I need some. I just knew it was that, like drama, and that drama would become a storm, and I kind of fed on it, but I got weary of the big frying pan over the head. I got weary of that learning style. So I decided that I'm going to take a more peaceful approach. So looking at it from that point of view, always seek the next higher thought, whatever that might be. Whatever your thought is, seek the next higher thought. You can't get from here, from despair all the way up to joy in one step, but you could get from despair to hope if you really work at it. You can take that next step. So always seek that next higher thought. Keep in touch. Keep communicating. Isolation doesn't help anyone with anything. It never does. It just makes things longer. It makes things harder. And your mind begins to swirl in a way that you can't find peace because you're in a cycle. You're in a vicious cycle, and this thought leads to this thought, leads to this thought, leads to this thought, and you have a sleepless night, and then you wake up, and there it is again, and you're back at square one. So communicating with others helps break those cycles. It brings some fresh water into the conversation, some different patterns into your thinking. Again, focus on gratitude. So, again, my grandmother. We were in a car wreck together when I was a kid, and that was a bit of a storm. It was a pretty bad wreck. And the very first words out of her mouth were, "Thank you, God." And I was like, "Well, Grandma, what's up with that? Why are you being so thankful? We just got in a bad wreck." She said, "We're alive." Immediately. Now, I would have gotten there too. I think we all would get there eventually. But she was a master of being there, not having to get there. She was a master of just being in that place of gratitude at all times. And some of you may have seen my talk on her. It's called Grateful Heart because she was a master of gratitude. And that's where I learned a lot about the power of gratitude. But it works here too. Even in the midst of a storm, go back to the first slides that say storms are good. Storms are natural. Storms are important. And although I'm not particularly enjoying this one, I know that this is a good part of my process and that there's a rainbow at the end of this. And just that thought alone will help you find peace in this storm environment. Reach out to your support system. Stay calm. Avoid storm feeders. Right? There are people that bring gasoline to a barn fire, aren't there? Hello. Yeah, there are people that do that. There are people that purposely seek out, they find fires and they throw gasoline on them. And, you don't need those people in your life. And you need to really, especially when you're in the middle of something, check out your caller ID and make a decision not to pick up that call because you know how it's going to go. And you know the outcome and what that's going to look like for you. Maintain clear and healthy boundaries. Boundaries, you can do a whole talk on boundaries, but I think you get why that's important. Be steadfast in your spiritual practices. Don't give up now. If you meditate every morning and now you're in the middle of something and you run out of time, and don't let those things go. Those are the very things that are going to help you keep this boat afloat. So now's not the time to drop your important spiritual practices. Remind yourself that this too shall pass. Pray without ceasing. And then look for the good and also seek the lesson. Because that's really what the storm is for. So that's a shortcut. If you can figure out the lesson at the beginning of the storm, you don't need the whole duration of the storm to happen. They last as long as they need to. Right? And you have some control over how long they last because if you immediately say, all right, this is coming up. This is going to be a doozy. I feel it coming. I see it. You look out on the horizon and boom, here it's coming. And you're in touch enough with yourself that you're like, I have about 2 or 3 things I'm really going to focus in on that I think this storm might be about in my life. And really examine that. Put that to the heart test and run it by yourself and see, because you know what? Storms do move on. I've been on the beach and I've seen these black clouds coming. And I've also seen them just narrowly miss where I am. You ever had that happen? They don't necessarily have to hit because it's all about the lesson. So the faster you learn the lesson, the quicker you can avoid the storm. And then finally, there was before, how to prepare. There's during, what to do during the storm. And now there's what to do after the storm. This is kind of like the final step here. So the first thing you do when you realize, oh, it's over, just do what my grandmother would say. Thank you, God. You and I survived another storm in my life. I felt you with me the whole time. I knew this day was going to come. Here it is. Rejoice. If you didn't fully figure out the lesson, it's a good time to figure it out so you don't have to experience that same one again. Acknowledge and absorb that rainbow energy. We all love a rainbow, right? So now's the time to just soak that in, because you've just survived another one. You also have to assess the damage, right? You've just been through a hard time. One of my storms caused high blood pressure, and I ended up on blood pressure medication. And I had to assess the damage because I wasn't really feeling quite right after all this drama that I went through at work. And I could have just went on about life and said, oh, well, whatever. But I decided to go to the doctor, and it turns out it was high blood pressure. So you have to assess the damage. These emotional roller coaster type things have an impact and could have an effect on your surroundings. And there could be, some damage that needs to be assessed. Make any necessary repairs to the damage, right? Just like if it was a real storm in a real house. All right, now's the time to put the shutters back up. And all right, we're going to have to pump out the basement, and we're going to have to do a lot of things. But guess what? We're alive. We're good. We learned our lesson, and we're just mopping up now. And when you're ready, dig deep into the lessons of the storm. If you could figure it out at any point in time, and then when you're ready, really dig deep. Take a look back and say, all right, because the more you glean from that particular storm, the less likely you are to ever have to see it again, right? So really work with it. Take the time to spend time with it. Now that you're out of kind of the heat of the moment, now you're in good shape. Continually prepare for the next storm, and then pray without ceasing. See, we're coming up on the hour here. I'm going to do a quick meditation. One last thought, though. And this was the only slide that I added to the talk, because I realized that the most profound path to peace is trust. If you could truly trust in every environment, not just the storm and the good and the bad and the boring, if you could truly just trust that everything is in divine order, that's a peace thought beyond any peace thought. So that's an affirmation beyond any affirmation. Everything is in divine order. I can't see it, I don't understand it, but I trust that it is. So with that, I'm just going to invite us all to a quiet meditation. I'm going to have to put this one on. You can join me too. Check. Good. Let's go here. Yeah, much better. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Peace profound. Feel the peace within you. This peace is accessible to you any given moment. It doesn't matter what's happening around you. It just matters what's happening inside you. So just feel this peace and remember that you have access to it. Today, tomorrow, in all days, in all ways. This particular energy field is part of who you are. It's part of the composition of your spiritual soul. It can't be taken from you. So just experience this peace for a moment while I sing another verse. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory streams from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing Alleluia. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Now just bring yourself back to this place and this time. It's been my honor and pleasure to spend some peaceful time with my Unity family here and at home on Facebook. I hope that in some way this talk has helped you find some